You're listening to the Building Blocks podcast on Building Blocks Radio. The Building Blocks podcast is a weekly podcast devoted to fostering discussion around grassroots community and economic development. Thank you for listening. Good evening. I'm your host, Mike Thomas. I am the founder and president of Building Blocks. Building Blocks is a 501c3 nonprofit organization whose goal is to facilitate community and economic development by working closely with startups, small businesses, and individuals located in underserved communities through educating, mentoring, networking, fundraising, and other opportunities vital to building sustainable economic success and civic engagement. I originally started the organization in 2013 as a means of helping people fill out federal and state government filings. From then, the organization has grown immensely to provide a plethora of business education services, including the drafting of business and marketing plans, organization and leadership development courses, strategic planning modules, government contracting advising, and fundraising assistance, just to name a few. Let me tell you a little bit more about myself. I completed my undergraduate work at Florida Atlantic University in Boca Raton, Florida. I was a double major. I majored in communications and in political science. It was also during my undergraduate tenure that I completed 1,500 hours of community service through AmeriCorps, the very popular government volunteer program. And I think that's where my fervor for community, for civic engagement, and most importantly for service all really began. It was through that experience that I worked across the state of Florida with a multitude of organizations relating from youth development organizations, domestic violence organizations, so on and so forth, that I really developed a keen sense and understanding of the issues that were plaguing communities and what it took to help these communities where they were. So I definitely credit my time with AmeriCorps and serving with AmeriCorps to my excitement and my passion for community and economic development, but overall for service and for giving, and for trying to help your fellow man. From there, I graduated in 2013 with my Master of Public Administration, also from Florida Atlantic University. I was during that program that I learned a lot more about government administration. I learned a lot more about organization management, nonprofit management, and even private sector management, scientific business management as well. So a lot of those tools that I learned and I applied through my study and through my dissertations and my matriculation, I definitely applied a lot of those to how I help organizations today through my nonprofit organization, Building Blocks. From there, I decided to move to Washington, D.C. I picked up and moved to our nation's capital, where I attended a social justice law school, the University of the District of Columbia, David A. Clark School of Law. Once again, following on that theme of service and giving and community, it was essential that I attend a social justice law school that could help mold me and help shape me into a better giver, into a person who's more equipped to meet and address the needs of the disenfranchised and of the people who need services the most and who can't either afford them or who don't have access to them. So it was essential that I attend a school that would give me that opportunity to kind of hone those talents and those gifts and kind of cultivate them and bring them all together for the betterment of others and not just myself. I was there for 3 years. I was in D.C. for about 4.5 years. Stayed a little bit longer. Try to spread a lot of my organization's influence into the DMV, as they call it, the Washington D.C. metropolitan area, and that's why we have a satellite office there as well. Professionally speaking, I spent 7 years in the governmental sector, which included time in court administration at the county and at the federal government level. I also worked for agencies such as the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. I did actually have a stint there at HUD. And it wasn't just working with HUD or working independently within the organization of HUD, but it also enabled me to opportunities to work alongside organizations such as SBA, such as the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, and as well the United States Department of the Treasury. So it was a all-encompassing experience that I had working within the federal government. And once again, I've used all of those tools as well to make me better equipped to serve the communities that I serve. As a nonprofit, like I said, I have a nonprofit organization called Building Blocks. But in addition to that, I've worked with other nonprofit organizations, most notably the 100 Black Men of America. I work with their South Florida chapter, where I helped mentor some of the children that they worked with in their leadership academy. And I did that for a few years. Another very rewarding experience that taught me the importance of service, the importance of giving back to your community, and the importance of mentorship, most of all. Now, if any of you all are wondering, why is building blocks a thing? Mike, why did you start building blocks? Well, the best way to explain it is like this. I don't know if many of you are aware, but you may have heard of something called food deserts. Now, the very concept of food deserts comes from the understanding and from the very sad and harsh reality that communities actually lack substantive access to fresh produce and groceries within a 2.5 to 3 mile radius of certain communities and neighborhoods throughout the country. The ramifications for this are dire, folks. We're talking not just socioeconomic issues. We're not talking just access or poverty issues, but we're also talking about access to proper and adequate health care. We're also talking about health issues in general. The effects, the chronic effects of food deserts in America cannot be understated. And it's from that premise, it's from that understanding that I kind of created my own concept, using a lot of the research and a lot of the empirical data that I collected over the years to create my own concept called a business desert. For me, a business desert is more or less falls along the lines of the same as a food desert. It's an area that lacks business representation within a 2 to 3 mile radius from the people that live within that community. So, for example, if you live in a community, let's say 5,000 people, right? And of the 5,000 people, none or a very, very select few of the people in that community actually own, run, and operate a business within that community. That's what I would consider a business desert. And the effects of business deserts are, for my money, just as dire, just as consequential as food deserts, if you really think about it. Take a step back and understand that if the people within the community, don't have the means or don't have the resources to start the businesses within those communities, then businesses from outside that community are now going to come in and kind of take their place, if you will. And they're going to provide services and they're going to provide goods and products in that community that are being brought from outside the community. So there's little to no community reinvestment at all. And that is a major problem. Without that community reinvestment, we're talking a loss of job opportunities. We're talking a loss of wealth. We're also talking a transfer of wealth, which is very, very, very critical to the survival of a lot of urban and rural communities who struggle, with this dynamic. So the business desert, like I said, is a very unique concept. I'm still fleshing it out academically and scientifically daily. But as a construct, it's pretty, I think I hit the nail on the head pretty good there. At the end of the day, Building Blocks exists to narrow this gap, to close the quote unquote business deserts by spurring community and economic development, at the grassroots level within these communities by engaging the populace, by engaging people, by engaging, the person or the persons and organizations and companies that have these great ideas that want to manifest them in their neighborhoods, that want to manifest them in their communities, but either don't have the resources, the time, the money, or the acumen, you know, to bring these things to fruition. So Building Blocks steps into that role as educator, as mentor, as networking provider, and we definitely try to offer a slew of tools and services that can help these businesses or help these people get their ideas and get their businesses off the grounds so that they can be stalwarts and cornerstones of their communities. Most importantly, or not just because, they can make a living and do very well for themselves in their community, but most importantly because their community needs them. With that being said, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to get into some statistics that contribute to the idea of why Building Blocks does what it does and why it's necessary. And also, of course, the importance of, for example, small business and the importance of resources, educations, tools, and various other things. The importance of those things to the existence of small businesses in rural and urban communities. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Building Blocks podcast on Building Blocks Radio. It's so funny. One of the questions that I keep on getting, not just from clients, but even from other academicians or just people who want to know more about the organization or want to truly understand, what it is that, we're trying to do here at Building Blocks. The question I get is, why are small businesses so important? And, it's funny, that it's certainly a question that I don't take for granted. And, I was always taught from young, they say that, the only dumb question or the only bad question is the one that you don't ask. And, it's on that note that I try to answer it thoughtfully, even though, at times I go, well, it's pretty obvious, the more businesses, the better, elected officials always like to say small businesses are the backbone of America. And in many ways, that is true. Small businesses go into the crevices of this country that a lot of larger companies or organizations just simply don't. And because of that, a lot of communities are actually thriving or always have thrived. And have weathered some very, very, harsh economic storms throughout the course of American history, because their community was very reliant on small business. So I figured I'd just leave you guys with a couple of numbers, a few stats that kind of show the importance of small businesses. Um, First and foremost, small businesses employ 50 million Americans. I mean, that's over a quarter of the entire American workforce. That is a very substantial number. Considering that, small businesses, as plentiful as they are, a vast majority of small businesses are micro businesses. Micro businesses are businesses that have 10 employees or less. So when you think about that, when you think about what it means to start a business can be, one person. A small business can be 10 people. A small business in some respects can be up to 500 people. The definition does change quite a bit, but it's always worth noting that, yeah, the small business employs an awful lot of people. And because of that, it's always important that a large amount of investment goes into small business. A respectable amount of investment goes into small businesses. So yeah, so always keep that in mind. 50 million Americans are employed at what's considered to be a small business. Um, so that's a pretty substantial number. I got another substantial number for you. Small businesses generate $11 million in revenue each year. Think about that. $11 million in revenue comes from small businesses. I mean, that That is why people say small businesses are the backbone of America. $11 million is nothing to scoff at. Excuse me, $11 trillion. Excuse me, is nothing to scoff at. That is a that by itself is as large a GDP as just about almost any other nation in the world, except for obviously China, India, Japan. But that's amazing. That's amazing, and that's the power of small business, the ability to generate that kind of revenue, um, is miraculous, and it can't be understated, because this is the model, and these are the things that we as people who are investors of community, people who are stakeholders in our community, and even people that are entrepreneurs, you know, that's the number that we have to keep in mind, because at the end of the day, it reminds us that one, it's out there, and two, we have to go and get it. And a number that's near and dear to my heart, a statistic that's near and dear to my heart: 71% of small businesses invest locally in charities and causes specific to the area in which they reside, and that very much is one of the primary crutches of building blocks and our mission. We believe in community reinvestment. Businesses of any size can come into someone's community and take, right? And they basically plunder the area of its resources, whether it be its actual physical resources, mineral, like in mining and things of that nature, um, or whether it's just the resource in itself, obviously the people there, the people's time, the people's money, the commercial space. These are all things that you have to consider. When a business comes into a community, and that business is not of the community and does not intend to serve the community, that's money that's being funneled outside of that community. So that becomes a problem, because that money is not going to be likely to be reinvested in that area. That money is not going to be spent in that area, save for obviously, a lease, right? And yeah, and that's a huge problem. So it's always important that you keep in mind that 71% of small businesses invest locally in charities and causes specific to the area in which they reside. This goes well beyond just the idea of corporate social responsibility, a term that we will definitely get into at a during a later show at a later date. But yeah, at the end of the day, it is pivotal for small businesses and local organizations to take their resources and to invest them back into the people that more or less invest in them, that spend their hard-earned money with them, that spend their time with them, that thought or saw enough in that business or in that business model or in that organization to spread the word about their existence and thereby increase that business's clientele. These are essential, absolutely essential, to not only the growth of the business, but also to the growth of the community. And that's why that's such a pivotal number. And that's why, here at Building Blocks, we definitely like to use that number and kind of stand on that number as living proof that it can be done, that community and economic development can not only be grassroots, but most importantly, can be used as a tool to drive camaraderie, to drive civic engagement in local, urban, and rural communities, especially ones that struggle. Yeah. So those are some of the numbers that I wanted to leave with you. And there are also a lot of things that that we also predicate our work on. The reason why Building Blocks in general feels that need, that desire, uh, to be hands on with the businesses and with the organizations that reach out to us. One of the primary reasons that we feel the need to is because we understand that there is an education gap. We understand that not everyone has adequate resources, not just financially, but educationally as well. There are a myriad of wonderful ideas, of wonderful concepts, of wonderful creations, if you will, from people all over the United States and they never get off the ground, right? Because they either lack the resource, they either lack the time, they either lack some, rudimentary or basic understanding. That's no fault of their own. They simply, you know, are missing a key element, a key building block, no pun intended, but they're just missing a key element that helps them to, bring their great ideas to fruition. And that's where we come in, you know. Um, Generally speaking, you know, business education services are, usually left to academia, are usually left to maybe even business consulting services and things of that nature. Building blocks, we kind of wanted to turn that model on its head, ultimately saying that these things should not be necessarily, used for profit. Granted, once again, I'm not, trying to, crap on the work, for lack of a better term or lack of a better word. I'm not trying to diminish, I should say, there we go, diminish the work. I think I like crap better. I'm not trying to crap on the work of business consulting services, and I'm definitely not trying to diminish the work of universities and schools and whether it be public or private or junior colleges. I'm certainly not trying to undermine the work that they've done in these areas to instill within their students and their customers. In the case of business consultants, you know uh, to instill within them the importance of of sharpening their knife, if you will, and sharpening the acumen that they need to run a successful business. However, with that being said, um, you know, the wealth gap and the inequality gap being what it is in America, we also have to acknowledge that a lot of those services, a lot of those things are not readily available to people in rural and urban communities. So we go from there, and Building Blocks intends to move into that space and to fill that gap. So yeah, that's kind of what we do. And with all that being said, it brings me to the idea of or the understanding that businesses struggle, businesses fail. Here's a number for you, and this is going to shock you. As many businesses fail each year as are created. Imagine that. So if 400,000 businesses, and that's actually the number, actually the number I believe is 462,000 businesses were started in 2016. Approximately 460,000 businesses failed. Um, I don't know if you want to call that balance or the circle of life, but I think it is very telling. That's a high number. And that doesn't mean that all of those businesses had great ideas. That doesn't mean that all of those businesses had horrible ideas. It doesn't, there are a lot of different variables that factor into why a business closes. But a sizable portion of that number, that 460,000 businesses that fail, a sizable portion of that number does relate to issues that could be solved if these organizations had the assistance of an organization like Building Blocks. And that's the gap that we're also trying to fill. Little things, for example, small businesses that plan are 2.5 times more likely to succeed. 2.5 times is substantial. That's 250% more likely to succeed. I mean, that's amazing. That is an amazing number. The Journal on Long Range Planning published a statistic that said 30.4% of small businesses that actually create a viable business plan realize an increase in their sales. And I mean, that's a very substantial number. And I mean, it seems pretty simple, if an organization is giving or a business is being thoughtful and planning, you know, and planning their organization's outlook, whether it be for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years, then they can use it as a rubric to move forward, and and they can reap the benefits of their hard work, of their pre-planning. That is not always the case. A lot of organizations and a lot of companies are started, off the cuff, kind of just overnight. And certainly they're the ones that need us the most. And we avail ourselves to them and any other organization that needs help, especially, but primarily, an organization that is in a rural or urban community, in these areas that we designate as quote unquote business deserts. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to go over the building blocks organization goals and why they're important for not just small businesses, but why they're important also for the communities that we serve and why they're so important to us. Welcome back to the show. This is actually going to be our final segment, and I wanted to leave you guys with some of the organization's day-to-day goals. Now, I'm a firm believer that if you're a nonprofit organization and your goals do not incorporate the people that you serve, then they're not goals and you're not a real organization. And I know that sounds harsh and I know that sounds a bit strong, but at the end of the day, a nonprofit organization is just that, a nonprofit organization. And the profit is never to be reaped by the organization, but by the people they serve. Everything that you do is supposed to be selfless. And that's why we take comfort and we take great pride in the success of the businesses that we've worked with. We've worked with now over 75 businesses over the course of the last 3 years, since we actually earned our 501c3 tax exempt status. And, it's something that we truly believe in. It's something that, we can take that number, we can use it to tell the story and tell the story of, whether it be a cupcake business, whether it be a food truck, whether it be a clothing business, whether it be an online store. We've worked with so many businesses, and there's so many stories and so many grateful people and so many great people, that we've encountered over the years that have, truly motivated us and inspired us just as much as we've motivated and inspired them. And that's why it's important that, I share with you some of our goals because, like I said, our goals ultimately are the goals of the clients and the people that we serve. For example, or for instance, one of our primary goals are to help businesses save money. At the end of the day, when you start a business, you do it to, maximize profits, right? Minimize losses. And it becomes essential for organizations to save money, because that is ultimately money that you can use to pay one of your employees. That's ultimately money that you can use to contribute to business expansion. That's ultimately money that you can keep in your pocket. I need not get into the slew of things that you can do with money that's not being spent on frivolous items or things that your business may or may not need. We also want to better educate people and businesses on the fundamental businesses, practices, and processes. I think that's pretty straightforward. As I said earlier, a lot of the issues that businesses have and as to why they fail, especially after such a short time, is poor planning, poor process, poor access to resources such that bolster planning and process, not just money. It's not always about money. Don't get me wrong. A lot of businesses do struggle and do ultimately fail because of lack of money, but that only tells part of the story. Planning, process are usually the two things that our organization highlights as reasons why these businesses flounder. Another one of our goals is to promote civic engagement and community involvement. Building blocks as an organization can only be as strong, as potent, and as effective as the organization that it serves, or excuse me, as the community that it serves. It is vital that we reach into these communities and we don't just bolster them from a financial standpoint. If that's what they want, then they can get that from a business consultant, right? But our goal is to make sure that in bolstering them, we are also improving their community and their surrounding area. by helping them start that business, by helping them expand that business, by helping them make that business better and make their products better, and by giving them the tools to succeed in that area. We hope that there's not a trickle down effect, rather, but that success, that fervor, that passion, and most importantly, that progress permeates the area in itself. Another one of our goals is to assist communities in building self-sustaining models. At the end of the day, we want a community. We should all strive to want a community that where we can get as many of the things that we need to get by within that community. Granted, there's nothing wrong with traveling. There's nothing wrong with venturing into other areas or other communities. There's nothing wrong with that. That intercommunal, activity. There's nothing wrong with that. However, it is essential that if you need a gallon of milk, you should be able to get it, within a reasonable place, and within a reasonable time and within a reasonable distance. These things are very essential, especially in urban and rural communities, where resources are lacking. So it becomes of the utmost importance that these things are not far away, and that these things are within reach. Another one of our goals is to mitigate the effect of chronic unemployment and poverty that plagues urban populations throughout the country. Um, I know that sounds like a very daunting task, and trust me, it is. Trust me, it is. Chronic unemployment and poverty. There's a reason why it's chronic, right? But ultimately, I do wholeheartedly feel that a grassroots approach to to community development, community and economic development, will mitigate the effects of chronic poverty and chronic unemployment. Obviously, more businesses in a smaller concentrated area means more job opportunities for the people that live within that community and in that area. More employment opportunities obviously means more income. More income means less poverty. So yeah, while it sounds simple enough, right? Yeah, that's no easy feat and that's no easy task. But you know, building blocks is certainly up for the challenge, and we hope that you as a listener, and we hope that the people that you know and the people within your reach are also up to the task of bolstering and improving your local communities through investing in them and through you know buying and purchasing within them. That is of the utmost importance. It really is. It really is. Another one of our goals, and one that is near and dear to my heart, is to help families live affordably in their homes and improve their quality of life. Once again, the interdependent relationship between wealth and income equality, home affordability, revenue generation, and property taxes. I know it's a mouthful. There's a lot there, but the interdependent relationship among those factors can never be understated. As a matter of fact, not to bore you with any legalese or you know too much historical context, but I mean, over 150 years of American jurisprudence in relation to home affordability rest on the crutch of those issues being rolled into one. That is very critical. A lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people don't know that. But their interdependent relationship largely determines how poverty manifests itself, and where poverty manifests itself. So, as it relates to families living affordably in their homes, once again, it's a pretty obvious relationship. Uh, Businesses coming into thriving communities, the property taxes thereby being collected to fund and to create more opportunities within an area, and the people that are living in that area, the true stakeholders of that community, are the ones reaping the benefits. Not gentrification, not displacement, not faux community reinvestment, and those are all things that we will talk about at a later date. Trust me. But But yeah, but true, authentic community reinvestment where the stakeholders, the people that currently live in that community, are the ones reaping the benefit of the progress. Um, that is not only possible, but in my mind, it is the wave of the future. And Building Blocks is trying to get there. And the one way that we try to get there is by reaching out to people within the community, not just the business owners, but also the people within the community, the families, the homeowners, the renters, even everyone that lives in a given area. And we find out what it is that they feel their community needs to thrive. Because just as important as, what a business feels they need to succeed financially is what a community feels they need to succeed, not just financially, but also socially, sociopolitically, economically, so on and so forth. So yeah, those are just some of the many organization goals that we have, and I hope that that kind of sheds more light on what Building Blocks does as an organization. Please do not hesitate to visit our website. It's buildingblocks.community, or you can go buildingblocksfl.org. You can use either or; it'll direct you to the same website. You can hit us up on social media, of course. Hit us up on Facebook. Hit us up on Twitter. We're on Twitter. Hit us up on Instagram. We're in all walks of life. Yes, and we definitely try to make ourselves accessible for every and any and all opportunities, but for most importantly, for any and every and all inquiries. If you have a question that's business related, if you have a question that's business education related, if you have a question that's community related, feel free to contact us. You can contact me directly at mike@buildingblocksfl.org, or you can actually give Building Blocks a call at our toll-free number. That's 1-888-728-9288. I'll say that for you one more time. That's 1-888-728-9288. And before I go, I want to leave you with this final thought. Growing up, I didn't have the best of everything, but I had everything I needed. And it's on that premise that I decided to commit myself to service. Because while I didn't have everything I wanted, and while I did have everything I needed, the one thing that I also realized and I understood, that there were people that were lacking both. And service delivery is not only a passion, but I believe it truly, deep in my heart, it's also a calling. There are different ways to give. Some people give time, some people give money, some people give talent, resource, space, opportunities. There are no shortage of ways for people to tap into, their prowess of giving in order to make sure that that there's a system in place that's fundamentally sound that allows for the taking care of people that are less fortunate. Building Blocks is built on this very premise. And aside from Building Blocks, it's a cornerstone of how I choose to live my life, and even the many people that I interact with. It's one of the primary reasons I decided to go to a social justice law school. It's one of the many reasons I started this organization, obviously. It's also one of the many reasons why I've, put myself in a position where I can, help people, like I said, whether it be with business education services, whether it be with advice, whether it be with legal counsel, all of the above. Anything that I can do to help people who are underprivileged, afford them an opportunity to make the best of their situation, but most importantly, afford them an opportunity to get beyond their situation. And I believe that becomes very critical to not just their success, but my own personal mental and emotional success as well. When they win, I win. And I think that, to all my listeners out there, to whoever's listening, I think that it's very critical and it's very important to find, find your way of giving. We all don't give the same way. We all don't have to give the same way. And sometimes we just don't have to give, right? But sometimes we do. And it's up to us to be proactive in that approach. It's up to us to find ways, to find avenues, to find people who are in need of the things that we can do and are in need of the things that we can give. Not to say that we've done it, not to say that it's been done, not to brag, but like I said, to fill in the gaps. To fill in the gaps that that society, for whatever reason, it doesn't really matter at this point, right? It doesn't matter, right? But it becomes essential for us to fill in those gaps and to find different ways, to find different avenues, and find different techniques to serve the people who need to be served the most. My name is Mike Thomas. Thank you for listening. This will be one of what I hope will be many, 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 many podcasts. As we go on, I'm sure that production will get a lot better. Hope it wasn't too horrible. I hope I didn't stumble over too many of my words. But it was truly a pleasure and an honor to shoot the breeze with you about something that I care about, for these last few minutes. Please be sure to check back to our Facebook page. Please be sure to check back to the Twitter, the Instagram page. The YouTube page is coming up soon. Trust me, it's coming soon. Check back regularly for these podcasts. We're going to go with this every Monday night. That's right. Every Monday, we're going to have a new podcast, and we're going to discuss new topics and new issues that are near and dear to your hearts and to the hearts of community and economic developers everywhere. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, once again, the number is 888-728-9288, or you can reach me directly at mike@buildingblocksfl.org. Thank you for listening. You have a wonderful evening.